Welcome to the Building Bridges for Adults first workshop on Buddhism. Buddhism is a religion based on rationality, objectivity, personal experience, and practice. It does not say anything about God. In fact, whether a person believes in any divine power at all is immaterial to Buddhism. What does matter? The mind. Delusions of the mind are what Buddhism seeks to eliminate. Opening and purifying the mind is its process, and freedom of the mind, nirvana, is its ultimate goal. The term nirvana, the way Buddhists use it, is not the same as the idea of heaven. Nirvana is the state of liberation from the dictates of the senses. While the Buddha said bliss is nirvana, this absolutely does not mean a dreamy, insensible state. Indeed, the closer to nirvana one becomes, the more fully present and aware they are. Truth cannot be sought or expected anywhere but here. Buddhism is also a faith of great compassion. The Buddha himself was a man of enormous compassion, not judging others by appearance or caste, welcoming women and outcasts as students and training them as teachers, and ministering to those less fortunate with his own hands. The Buddha's strength in both head and heart has allowed Buddhists through the ages to choose a path to follow that speaks best to them, and major divisions of Buddhism have formed as a result. Some focused on the mind, others on the heart. Happily and instructively, the constant emphasis in Buddhism on being at peace within oneself and with other people has meant that these spiritual divisions have not resulted in significant conflict among their followers, contrasting sharply with what we see in Islam and Christianity. The Buddha grew up in a Hindu society of India, and he believed in reincarnation. However, he did not believe in a physical soul that transmigrated to the next body. Rather, he likened a person's selfhood to a wave in the sea. As a wave moves along, its substance changes completely and constantly, but we can still recognize it as the same wave. The Buddha believed that a person's essence was like the wave, completely changing physical form but continuing on its path. He taught that achieving nirvana or full awareness could release someone from having to return in a physical body. According to Buddhist philosophy, the only constant in the universe is change itself, impermanence. The Buddha said, "Life is a journey, death is a return to earth. The universe is an inn, the passing years are like dust." Another Buddhist phrase, "this too shall pass," has become popularized in recent years and is a succinct statement of this fundamental Buddhist tenet. The name Buddha means enlightened one or awakened one. However, the founder of the Buddhist religion was not born enlightened. He was born Siddhartha Gautama, son of King Suddhodana and Queen Maya, rulers of Kapilavastu, India, in the foothills of the Himalayas in 566 BCE. When Siddhartha was born, a wise man predicted, if the prince remains in the royal household, he will become a great king. But if he leaves the household, he will find truth and become a great holy man. King Suddhodana envisioned Siddhartha as a holy man, giving up all worldly possessions, a wandering teacher with a begging bowl. That was not the life he wanted for his only son, so he surrounded his son with everything he would ever need or want. Sadly, the queen died 7 days after Siddhartha's birth. Her sister moved to the palace to raise the baby. The days passed quickly and Siddhartha grew. Despite having his every whim catered to, he was a sensitive and meditative boy. At age 16, he married his cousin, Princess Yasodhara. The king hoped that married life would keep the prince happy and at home, and so it was for the next 13 years. One day, when he was 29, Siddhartha asked his friend Channa to take him for a ride far away from the palace. On their journey, they encountered an old man. Siddhartha wondered what was wrong with this person. "Nothing is wrong," replied Channa. "He's just old. We will all be old one day." Siddhartha was very disturbed and asked to be taken home, where he could not stop thinking about the old man. What good is youth if you will get old, he wondered. The next day he asked Channa to go out again. On the way they encountered another sight new to the prince. When he asked Channa about it, Channa replied, "That man is very sick. We are all vulnerable to sickness." Siddhartha reflected on this all day and all night, thinking, what good is health if you will eventually get sick? In the morning they went riding again. This time Siddhartha witnessed a body being carried through the streets. Channa explained, "That man is dead." Death comes to all men, even princes. Siddhartha asked himself, what good is life if you will someday die? Once more, Chana and Siddhartha rode out into the city. There they saw a holy man in saffron robes. The prince asked, "Who are you?" The man replied, "I am a monk, a seeker of truth, of life over death. To find it, I have given up everything on this earth." Siddhartha decided he must do the same if he was to find peace. That night, Siddhartha crept out of the palace, regretfully leaving his father, his wife, and his newborn son. For a while he traveled with monks, but he did not feel any closer to the truth. He spent the next 6 years living as an ascetic. Asceticism taught that the way to truth was to deny the body. Ascetics denied themselves food and comfort and lived as hermits. Yet after 6 years, Siddhartha felt no closer to the truth. He decided that truth was not to be found in extreme circumstances or by denying the body, but through the mind and the heart, and from that day forward he chose to follow a middle path of moderation. After 6 years of seeking, one day Siddhartha came to a Bodhi tree and sat down beneath it, vowing not to leave until he knew the truth. While meditating and searching his heart, he came to understand how he was connected to all life and how to conquer suffering and death. He had become the Buddha, the awakened one. He expressed what he had learned in the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. The cause of suffering is selfish desire. The end of selfish desire will end suffering. And the way to end selfish desire is through the Eightfold Path. The Buddha shared his insights with many disciples across the land, including his father, wife, and son, who joined him in practicing the middle way. At the age of 80, he lay down and entered permanently into nirvana, the state of eternal peace without rebirth or death. Buddhists do not worship the Buddha, but actually honor the Buddha for his teachings, which can help anyone reach enlightenment. In this way, he is similar to other prophets. However, the Buddha did not claim that God spoke through him. He was a human like you and me. And though he may have reached the divine state of nirvana, you and I are just as capable of reaching that state as he. The Eightfold Path was mentioned in the story as a way the Buddha saw to attain enlightenment. It enumerates 8 aspects of life that a person should pay attention to in order to advance in spiritual growth towards enlightenment. The 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path are right knowledge, right aspiration, right speech, right behavior, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right absorption. Interestingly, there is another that is not listed, one so important it is treated as a presupposition, something you are supposed to do before you are even ready to start. It is called right association. Right association means surrounding yourself with people who are healthy and supportive of your spiritual work, preferably those who are also on a spiritual path. According to Buddhist teaching, you do not have to be around people, but if you are going to be with people, you should choose your companions wisely. In our faith tradition, right association is important too. This is a good reason to seek out a congregation and go to it as regularly as you can. When you attend regularly and start to become part of the congregation, you are engaging in right association by making the effort to spend time with people who are good for you and who nurture your spiritual growth. The first step on the Eightfold Path is right knowledge, actually becoming aware of the path. In Buddhist terms, this means recognizing the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. The cause of suffering is selfish desire. Selfish desire can be overcome. Selfish desire can be overcome and suffering eased by following the Eightfold Path. Right aspiration consists of wanting things that will help us be healthy and strong and achieve mental and spiritual growth. First, we recognize what we need to do, and then we decide that is what we want. The element of right speech and the next 2 are about learning new habits. Right speech begins with noticing our speech, how honest we are, the tone of our communications, and our intent. Once we are aware, the next step is to make positive changes, to speak more truthfully, more gently, and more generously. The details that the Buddha provided about right behavior almost exactly reproduce the last 5 dictates of the 10 Commandments. The 5 precepts, as they are called, are: do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not engage in sexual misconduct, do not take drugs or drink alcohol. The element of right livelihood pertains to how a person makes their living. The Buddha believed that what a person did to support themselves had echoes throughout their lives, and that personal growth could be supported by some occupations, but rendered impossible by others. For example, some livelihoods regarded by the Buddha as very harmful were butcher, prostitute, and weapons vendor. Sustained effort is seen as exceedingly important in Buddhism. The Buddha likened the work it takes to make spiritual progress to an ox straining to pull a cart through the mud. Although weary, the ox never looks aside or stops trudging until it has passed the muddy section of the road. This steady exertion demonstrates the consistent effort required to tame the mind and attain enlightenment. The Dhammapada, a collection of the Buddha's sayings, begins with the words, "All we are is the result of what we have thought." Because of this, Buddhism urges constant examination of our own thoughts. We must have perfect awareness of our own thoughts to see all things as they really are. Urges or aversions must also be examined until they no longer control us, and what remains is loving kindness towards all things. In one ancient story, a Buddhist student reports to his teacher that his studies are done. He has attained enlightenment. His teacher asks, "What foot did you use to step over the threshold?" The student thinks for a moment, then turns and leaves without a word, aware that since he does not know which foot stepped over the threshold, his awareness is not yet complete. Thich Nhat Hanh, a renowned Zen Buddhist master, considers mindfulness the single most important element of greater peace and understanding. He has written many books on the subject of mindfulness, including Peace is Every Step, The Path of Mindfulness in Everyday Life. Henry David Thoreau, of our own faith lineage, placed a high value on mindfulness as well. Ralph Waldo Emerson, a giant of 19th century Unitarianism, wrote, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming." The element of right absorption shows that the Buddha shared this conviction with Emerson, that the things we fill our thoughts with determine who we become. The Buddha also believed in self-determination. With proper preparation and perseverance, immersing our thoughts in what will further our spiritual journey, we can all move toward enlightenment, lessen the bonds of selfish yearnings, and become happier and more fulfilled as the wheel of Dharma turns. Consider the 7 UU principles and the elements of the Eightfold Path. Both these documents are guideposts for living. The principles appear within a document that defines the parameters of the Unitarian Universalist Association. In other words, they are part of an organizational document. The Eightfold Path was recorded specifically as a teaching tool. However, both are presented and used as guidelines for living well and growing as an individual and in community. The Eightfold Path has not changed in 2,500 years. This version of the UU Principles was adopted in 1985, and in accordance with our bylaws, we review the principles for revision periodically. Constant reflection and examination of what best furthers our spiritual work is part of both Buddhism and Unitarian Universalism, one strong parallel between these two faiths. Thank you for listening to the Building for Bridges for Adults first workshop on Buddhism. For more information on this topic, visit our Facebook page.